Do you ever feel like no matter how much you plan your day, your productivity just slips through your fingers? You've tried setting goals, blocking out time, and even using fancy apps, but somehow it's just not enough. The secret isn't about squeezing more into your day. It's about how you manage your mind. Welcome to Mind Management, Not Time Management by David Kadavy, a groundbreaking approach that turns conventional productivity on its head. Imagine if you could tap into your peak energy and creative cycles, harnessing them to work smarter, not harder. This book isn't about fighting against time. It's about aligning your mind with the natural rhythms of your creativity and focus. Think about it, time management can only get you so far. It's mind management that lets you maximize each minute, each task, and each project. Kadavy breaks down how our minds work best in phases, how to recognize when your creativity is at its highest, and how to turn your daily routine into a powerhouse for productivity. By the end of this video, you'll discover the key principles Kadavy lays out, from unlocking your creative cycles to building routines that work with your brain, not against it. So stay with me, because if you're tired of endless schedules that don't work, mind management, not time management, just might change the way you approach every single day. Ready to unlock the potential of your mind? Let's dive in. Part 1. Understanding mind management. The first section opens by challenging our long-held belief in traditional time management techniques. For many years, people have tried to pack more productivity into every hour by scheduling, organizing, and prioritizing, yet still, so many of us feel unfulfilled or constantly behind. This is because, as David Kadavy explains, traditional time management focuses too much on the clock and not enough on the mind that drives all those tasks. The book emphasizes that if we keep trying to divide our day into neat little time blocks, we're likely overlooking the crucial factor of mental energy and cognitive cycles that truly determine how well we perform any task. The fallacy of time management. Kadavy breaks down why our conventional methods of managing time often fail to produce the desired results. For one, he points out that time management treats every hour as if it's interchangeable, assuming that we can be equally productive at any time of day as long as we're organized. But we all know from experience that this simply isn't true. There are moments in the day when we're brimming with energy and creativity, and then there are those sluggish periods where even the simplest task feels insurmountable. Kadavy explains that this natural ebb and flow of our mental and physical states can't be forced into the rigidity of clock-based management. Time management was originally designed to optimize labor in factories during the Industrial Revolution, where each task had a set time, and workers were expected to be equally productive in each hour. However, today's work, especially creative work, is far different. Creative tasks, problem-solving, and innovative thinking require a certain mental state that doesn't necessarily show up on command. Just because it's 10 a.m., Kadavy calls this the fallacy of time management, arguing that our minds don't work like machines, so expecting them to function in a perfectly organized way is unrealistic. To illustrate this, Kadavy discusses how most people have their most creative or high-energy moments in the early morning, late at night, or sometimes randomly during the day. He challenges the traditional mindset that says we should organize our tasks around hours and minutes. Instead, he proposes that we begin organizing our tasks around our natural mental energy levels. He suggests that by observing when we feel most energized, we can start to build our schedules in ways that honor these rhythms. The big revelation here is that productivity doesn't come from time itself, but rather from how we harness and direct our mental energy during the time we have. From clock time to brain time. Kadavy introduces the concept of brain time, or working in sync with our brain's natural energy cycles. This idea revolves around a more flexible, responsive form of management that respects our cognitive rhythms. Rather than adhering to strict, hourly schedules, brain time emphasizes working in alignment with moments of peak mental performance. Kadavy encourages readers to tune into their cognitive highs and lows throughout the day and to take note of these patterns. By becoming more self-aware of when we feel focused, energized, or creative, we can start to recognize our personal brain time and make adjustments to our daily routine. The brain has different states throughout the day, which Kadavy explains are affected by factors such as sleep quality, diet, exercise, and even our emotional state. For example, the brain is generally sharper and more alert in the morning after a good night's sleep, which is why people often find it easier to focus on complex tasks early in the day. Afternoon dips are common due to natural circadian rhythms, making it a less ideal time for heavy creative work, but potentially a good time for simple, repetitive tasks. By understanding these cycles, Kadavy argues that we can become more efficient, not by forcing our brains to work against their natural rhythms, but by aligning our tasks to match those rhythms. In addition to this, Kadavy highlights how mental energy functions in bursts rather than steady flows. When we try to work continuously without breaks, our productivity declines because we're exhausting the finite mental resources we have available. He explains that unlike machines, the human mind needs regular refreshment and periods of rest to recharge. Kadavy suggests taking advantage of these natural intervals, working on creative or intense tasks during peak brain time, and allowing for rest or less mentally demanding activities during low-energy periods. Another major insight Kadavy shares is that clock time is static, but brain time is dynamic. This means that instead of seeing productivity as something that happens within set hours, we can view it as something that fluctuates based on the mind's current state. He compares this to driving a car on an empty road versus a congested one. During peak brain time, you can cover more ground in less time, just like you would on an empty road. During low energy times, you might be stuck in traffic, mentally moving slower despite putting in the same amount of time. Kadavy's approach goes beyond just telling readers to work when they feel in the zone. He delves into practical ways to track and identify these patterns. For example, he suggests keeping a mental energy journal where you note down your energy levels at different times of the day and how productive you feel. By doing this over a period of days or weeks, you'll start to see a pattern emerge, revealing your personal mental performance peaks and valleys. This information can then be used to strategically plan your day, assigning mentally demanding tasks to high-energy times and reserving simpler, routine tasks for lower-energy periods. The benefit of working with brain time, according to Kadavy, is that it allows for a more humane approach to productivity. Rather than pushing yourself to keep up with an arbitrary schedule, you're learning to work with your natural energy. This can reduce stress, prevent burnout, and actually make your work more enjoyable because you're doing the right tasks at the right times. Moreover, this approach leaves room for spontaneity and inspiration, which are essential in creative work. Instead of boxing yourself into a rigid structure, you're giving yourself the flexibility to flow with your cognitive energy, leading to better, more innovative results. Kadavy closes this chapter by addressing a common question. What about those who work regular jobs with set hours? He acknowledges that while it may seem challenging, understanding brain time can still be beneficial. For example, if you know you're most creative in the morning, you could try scheduling important meetings or intensive tasks during that time, while leaving less demanding work for when your mental energy dips. He encourages people to start small, testing this brain time approach wherever possible, even if it means only adjusting an hour or two within an otherwise fixed schedule. The key takeaway is that any effort to align work with mental energy rather than the clock can significantly improve productivity and mental well-being. Part 2. The Science of Productive Creativity. David Kadavy dives deep into the science behind creative productivity in the second section of this book. The insights he shares reveal that creative productivity isn't solely a matter of effort, time, or planning. It's a unique process that relies on understanding the mind's rhythms, harnessing mental energy, and working within a personalized creative cycle. Creativity requires us to tap into mental resources that aren't always available at a steady pace. So Kadavy's approach emphasizes the need for a flexible, intuitive way to work that's as much about managing energy as it is about managing ideas. By understanding this natural cycle, we can align our routines to support our creative flow and maximize the quality of our output. The role of energy and focus. Kadavy explains that energy and focus are the true foundations of productivity. He breaks down why mental energy is the most valuable resource in any creative endeavor, stressing that without it, Even the best ideas can't come to fruition. Creativity is less about forcing the brain to work and more about allowing it to tap into its peak energy states. Kadavy points out that, while time is a fixed resource, energy fluctuates throughout the day. People often try to manage their schedules down to the minute, ignoring that their energy and focus may not match the designated time for their task. This disconnect is what leads to common experiences of creative blocks, where we have the time set aside, but simply can't seem to engage our creative energy. Kadavy delves into the importance of cognitive load, explaining that every task we take on drains some amount of mental energy, which influences our capacity for focus. A high cognitive load can make it difficult to engage in creative thinking because the brain is bogged down with too much information or too many simultaneous tasks. He argues that simplifying one's workload and eliminating unnecessary tasks can help preserve cognitive energy for more complex creative processes. This isn't about doing less overall, but rather about being strategic with what and when we do things. Kadavy shares techniques such as batching simpler tasks together or offloading routine decisions to conserve mental resources for higher-stakes creative work. Furthermore, Kadavy talks about the concept of decision fatigue. Each decision we make throughout the day, no matter how small, takes a toll on our mental energy. By reducing the number of decisions we need to make, we're left with more cognitive power for the essential tasks. For example, some people plan their outfits the night before or have a set morning routine to avoid unnecessary decisions. Kadavy encourages readers to create systems that minimize decision-making in certain areas of life so that they can keep their mental focus intact for their creative work. This approach is particularly valuable in creative professions where fresh ideas and innovation are key, as it frees up energy for mental exploration and problem-solving rather than minor daily decisions. The creative cycle. Kadavy introduces the concept of the creative cycle, a pattern he says can help us work in harmony with the brain's natural rhythms. Just as the body follows a circadian rhythm that governs sleep and wakefulness, the mind also has cycles that influence when it's best suited for different types of tasks. Kadavy explains that the creative process consists of several distinct stages, each requiring a different mental state. For example, the initial stages of creative thinking, like brainstorming or generating ideas, demand a looser, more relaxed mental state. Conversely, the execution stage, where we bring ideas to life, requires more focused energy and discipline. By understanding these cycles, we can align our tasks to match the mental state required for each stage, making the creative process smoother and more enjoyable. Kadavy further explains that creativity is not a steady process, but one that ebbs and flows naturally. He emphasizes the importance of listening to these cycles instead of forcing oneself to perform at times when the mind is not prepared. For instance, many people experience bursts of creative energy in the morning or late at night when the brain is either fresh or relaxed. Kadavy suggests observing these patterns and planning creative work accordingly. He even recommends experimenting with work times to find the best personal rhythm, explaining that by doing so, one can tap into what he calls a peak creative flow. During these peak periods, creative work becomes easier, ideas come more readily, and the quality of output improves significantly. Kadavy also explores the notion of recovery phases in the creative cycle. Just as physical exercise requires rest and recovery for muscle growth, creative work demands mental breaks for rejuvenation. These recovery phases allow the mind to process information subconsciously, often leading to moments of insight when we least expect them. Kadavy encourages scheduling downtime and incorporating practices like meditation, nature walks, or simply engaging in hobbies unrelated to work to refresh the mind. He argues that these activities are not distractions, but essential elements of the creative process, helping to recharge mental energy and restore clarity. The creative cycle also incorporates periods of incubation, a term Kadavy uses to describe the time when ideas are forming below the surface. During these phases, the conscious mind steps back, allowing the subconscious to make connections between ideas. This is often when aha moments or breakthroughs occur. Kadavy recommends giving ideas room to develop by not rushing into execution immediately. Instead, he advises embracing periods of rest and mental disengagement to allow the subconscious to do its work, so when it's time to execute, the idea is fully formed and ready for action. In describing the creative cycle, Kadavy brings attention to the concept of creative confidence. He explains that many people shy away from creative work because they're afraid of failure or uncertainty. However, by following the natural creative cycle and trusting the process, one can build confidence and resilience in their creative abilities. When you recognize that creativity has its own rhythm and that each phase contributes to the final product, you're less likely to feel discouraged during slower periods. Kadavy highlights that confidence in creativity comes not from constant output, but from a respect for the entire creative process, including the ebbs and flows. Throughout this section, Kadavy uses real-life examples and research to back up his points, showing how people from various professions, writers, artists, scientists, have achieved breakthroughs by following the creative cycle. He discusses figures like Nikola Tesla and Salvador Dali, who both famously harnessed their creative cycles through strategic napping and solitude. Kadavy explains that these figures intuitively knew that creativity isn't about relentless effort, but about tapping into the mind's natural patterns. Part 3. Building a productive routine. David Kadavy dedicates an entire section to guiding readers on building routines that support mental clarity and creativity, aiming to help people create an adaptable structure that supports individual productivity. He argues that productivity isn't about filling every moment with work. Instead, it's about understanding and managing mental energy, setting up the right routines to optimize creative output, and working in a way that feels natural rather than forced. The routines he advocates for are different from traditional time-based schedules because they are designed to adapt to each person's unique energy levels and peak mental states. This section reveals that by thoughtfully structuring our daily lives, we can create the ideal conditions for both productivity and creative insight. Routines for mind management. Kadavy introduces the concept of creating routines that prioritize mental clarity rather than rigid time frames. He recognizes that while time is often seen as the primary unit for measuring productivity, it's actually mental energy and clarity that determine the quality of our work. Building routines that foster mental clarity means shaping our environment, habits, and daily practices in ways that protect and enhance our focus. Kadavy argues that without mental clarity, no amount of time management can make a difference in how effectively we complete tasks. Kadavy explains that routines are valuable because they help the brain save energy. Every time we face a new decision, our mental resources are slightly depleted. By building a routine, we essentially pre-decide a series of actions, which allows us to spend less energy on trivial decisions and instead focus on more complex creative thinking. For example, having a set morning routine, like starting the day with a short meditation, followed by a set period of writing or brainstorming, means that we avoid the cognitive drain of figuring out how to begin each day. This routine brings clarity by setting a consistent tone, which helps the brain transition into a productive state more quickly and with less effort. Kadavy suggests that one of the most important elements of an effective routine is flexibility. Traditional routines are often designed to be followed strictly, but Kadavy argues that such rigidity can actually hinder productivity, especially for creative work that requires moments of spontaneity. Instead, he advocates for routines that are flexible enough to accommodate fluctuations in mental energy. For instance, instead of designating fixed times for tasks, one might create routines based on mental states rather than hours. This means organizing the day in blocks of creative tasks, focused tasks, and routine tasks, allowing the individual to move between these blocks based on their current mental clarity and energy level. Kadavy points out that by creating flexible routines, we respect our natural rhythms, which ultimately leads to more consistent productivity. Moreover, Kadavy emphasizes the importance of having transitional routines to move from one type of work to another. These routines help the mind shift gears without feeling disoriented or overwhelmed. For example, after completing a deep work session, it can be helpful to spend a few minutes in a transition activity, like taking a short walk or doing a quick stretch before starting the next task. Transitional routines signal to the brain that it's time to shift focus, making it easier to adapt to different types of mental work. Kadavy notes that these small rituals, while seemingly insignificant, have a profound impact on maintaining mental clarity throughout the day. Kadavy also discusses the role of environmental cues in creating productive routines. He explains that the environment we work in can either support or disrupt mental clarity. Clutter, distractions, and even certain colors or sounds can affect how well we concentrate. To support mental clarity, he suggests designing a workspace that feels calm, organized, and conducive to focus. For some people, this might mean keeping a minimalist desk setup, while for others, it could involve creating a creative corner filled with inspiring materials. Kadavy encourages readers to experiment with different setups to find an environment that truly enhances their ability to focus and work effectively. Optimizing for your creative peak. Kadavy dives into the process of identifying and maximizing one's individual peak creative states. He argues that creativity isn't something that can be scheduled for a specific time, but rather, it's about learning to recognize when the mind is naturally in a creative mode and structuring our routines to capitalize on these moments. He explains that each person has unique rhythms, with some feeling most creative in the early morning, others late at night, and still others in random bursts throughout the day. By paying close attention to these patterns, Kadavy believes that individuals can better plan their creative work around times when their mental energy is at its highest. Kadavy introduces various techniques for discovering one's creative peak. One of the most effective methods, he says, is to keep a mental energy log. This log is a simple record where one notes down energy levels, focus, and creativity at different times of the day. Over time, patterns emerge that reveal when the individual feels most creative and alert. Kadavy suggests that this process may take several weeks, but once these peak times are identified, they become invaluable for planning tasks that require deep focus and original thought. By working with these natural energy cycles, rather than against them, individuals can significantly boost both the quality and efficiency of their work. Kadavy then explores how to structure routines to align with these creative peaks. He suggests scheduling creative sprints during peak times, short, intensive periods where the sole focus is on generating new ideas, brainstorming, or tackling complex problems. These creative sprints harness the brain's natural energy during high-performance moments, often resulting in better insights and solutions. Kadavy advises against spending these valuable peak hours on routine or administrative tasks, as they are better suited for times of lower mental energy. Instead, he encourages readers to protect these peak times by setting boundaries and minimizing distractions. In addition to identifying peak creative times, Kadavy also emphasizes the importance of rest and recovery periods to maintain high productivity over the long term. Creativity can be intense, requiring significant mental effort, and therefore needs periods of mental recharging. Kadavy explains that these recovery periods are not wasted time, but essential components of the creative cycle. Just as physical training requires rest for muscles to grow, creative work requires downtime for ideas to solidify and for the mind to regain its strength. He suggests that simple, restful activities like a walk in nature, listening to music, or even taking a short nap can provide the mental rejuvenation necessary to sustain creative productivity. Kadavy also discusses how to manage low-energy times effectively. While not every hour of the day will be a peak creative moment, these low-energy periods can still be productive if we use them strategically. For instance, he recommends using these times for tasks that require less mental energy, like administrative work, emails, or light reading. By aligning low-energy periods with lower-stakes tasks, individuals can still make progress without depleting mental resources that would be better used during creative peaks. Kadavy sees this as a way to keep the momentum of productivity going without exhausting oneself by trying to work against natural energy cycles. Throughout this section, Kadavy reinforces the importance of being patient and adaptable when building a productive routine. He acknowledges that finding the perfect rhythm takes time and experimentation. Rather than expecting instant results, he encourages readers to view this process as an ongoing practice. Productivity and creativity, according to Kadavy, are skills that can be developed and refined, but they require continuous self-awareness and willingness to adapt to changes in mental and physical states. Kadavy's message is one of flexibility and self-compassion, reminding readers that building a routine is less about perfection and more about creating conditions that support sustained creativity and productivity. Part 4. Advanced Strategies for Mind Management. David Kadavy delves into a more refined approach to managing creativity and productivity in the fourth section of Mind Management, not Time Management. Here, he introduces advanced strategies that push readers to rethink how they structure their creative processes, aiming for a deeper mastery of the mental habits and techniques that foster sustainable productivity. Kadavy emphasizes that once the foundational principles of mind management are in place, the next step is to build sophisticated, intentional limits that can fuel creative growth rather than restrict it. In particular, he explores two major strategies: the power of constraints and the use of specific mind management techniques and tools. By applying these strategies, Kadavy believes that individuals can tap into a heightened level of creativity and discipline, where limitations become assets and effective mental tools help the mind to stay focused and sharp. Using constraints and limits. Kadavy begins this chapter by discussing the often overlooked value of constraints, which he sees as essential drivers of creativity rather than obstacles. Many people believe that unlimited freedom is ideal for creative work, but Kadavy argues that this can often lead to indecision, distraction, and a lack of direction. Constraints, he explains, act as boundaries that sharpen focus, forcing individuals to work within specific parameters that can make the creative process more efficient and enjoyable. By setting clear limits on resources, time, or scope, creators are more likely to come up with innovative solutions and ideas because the constraints push them to maximize their available options. One of Kadavy's key points is that constraints encourage what he calls creative problem solving. When options are limited, the brain is compelled to search for solutions within a defined set of parameters, which often leads to original thinking. For instance, Kadavy illustrates this by pointing to artists or designers who impose color restrictions on their work, thereby challenging themselves to create striking designs within that limit. In a broader context, Kadavy encourages readers to apply this principle to any field, whether they are writing, designing, coding, or solving complex business problems. By setting limits, creators force themselves to look deeper into the resources they do have, often leading to breakthroughs that wouldn't have been possible in a situation with endless freedom. To effectively use constraints, Kadavy suggests implementing self-imposed deadlines as one way to harness the power of limits. He acknowledges that many creative tasks can feel daunting or intimidating, and the absence of a strict deadline can lead to endless delays. By giving themselves a specific time constraint, creators create a sense of urgency that prevents overthinking and encourages swift action. Kadavy refers to the 80-20 rule, or the Pareto principle, explaining that 80% of results often come from 20% of the effort. With a shorter timeline, creators are forced to prioritize the most important aspects of their work, leading to more effective output. For example, setting a deadline for writing a chapter or completing a project phase forces a writer to focus on essential ideas rather than getting bogged down in unnecessary details. Another form of constraint Kadavy highlights is the concept of resource limits. For instance, limiting the number of tools or materials available for a project can prompt the brain to use those resources in unconventional ways. This approach is particularly useful in fields like art or design, where working with fewer resources can often result in more imaginative and resourceful creations. Kadavy shares stories of renowned creatives and innovators who have used this principle to their advantage. From filmmakers with budget constraints who developed groundbreaking visual styles to inventors who, out of necessity, found alternatives to expensive materials, Kadavy shows that limitations often lead to some of the most compelling work. He encourages readers to embrace scarcity as a driving force for creativity rather than seeing it as a hindrance. Kadavy also emphasizes the importance of scope constraints, which he describes as setting clear boundaries around the scale or ambition of a project. Sometimes creative blocks stem from the overwhelming nature of a large project. When faced with an enormous task, the mind can become paralyzed, unsure of where to begin. By intentionally limiting the scope, such as deciding to write a short story instead of a novel or focusing on one feature of a product instead of a full version, creators can make the process more manageable. Kadavy argues that this approach helps prevent burnout and maintains momentum, as the smaller, achievable goals lead to frequent victories that keep motivation high. Mind management techniques and tools. Kadavy introduces practical tools and techniques designed to manage focus and mental clarity, tailored specifically for those looking to enhance creativity. He believes that even with effective routines and constraints in place, individuals need specific methods to stay in control of their mental processes. Kadavy describes a variety of strategies that range from simple mindset shifts to digital tools, each designed to help creators harness their mental energy in productive and sustainable ways. His approach combines traditional productivity tools with an understanding of the unique demands of creative work, focusing on ways to protect and nurture mental space while avoiding common pitfalls of modern work environments. One of the primary techniques Kadavy emphasizes is single tasking, which involves dedicating undivided attention to one task at a time. In an age of constant distractions, single tasking can be challenging, but Kadavy explains that it's essential for deep, meaningful work. Multitasking, he argues, divides attention and drains mental energy, making it harder to reach a state of flow where creativity can flourish. By focusing solely on one task, creators can delve deeper into their work, resulting in higher quality output. Kadavy suggests setting up designated times for single tasking, during which all other distractions, like notifications or social media, are turned off. This practice not only improves focus, but also trains the brain to work with greater depth and purpose. Another method Kadavy discusses is the use of mind maps to organize ideas and encourage nonlinear thinking. Mind mapping involves visually plotting ideas in a way that mirrors the natural connections the brain makes between concepts. This technique helps prevent the mental clutter that often arises during brainstorming sessions, making it easier to see patterns and relationships between ideas. Kadavy explains that mind maps are particularly useful for projects with many interconnected elements, as they allow creators to capture thoughts in a structured but flexible way. By externalizing ideas in a visual format, creators can gain clarity on complex subjects, reduce cognitive load, and stimulate further ideas. Kadavy also explores the benefits of creative incubation, a technique that involves stepping away from a project to allow the subconscious mind to process information. He explains that breakthroughs often come not during the act of working, but during periods of rest or low-intensity activity. This is because the subconscious continues to work on problems even when the conscious mind is occupied with other things. Kadavy recommends building regular breaks into one's routine, such as taking a short walk or engaging in a relaxing activity, to give ideas a chance to marinate and evolve. He argues that these breaks are not wasted time, but are integral parts of the creative process, allowing the mind to arrive at solutions more effortlessly. To support these techniques, Kadavy discusses several digital tools that can help manage creative work effectively. Tools like Pomodoro timers encourage focus by breaking work into intervals, typically 25 minutes of focused work followed by a 5-minute break. This technique keeps the brain engaged without leading to burnout, especially for tasks that require sustained attention. Kadavy also recommends using apps designed for distraction blocking to prevent interruptions, as these tools temporarily disable access to certain websites or apps that can derail focus. By integrating these tools into their routines, creators can protect their mental space from the temptations of constant connectivity, enabling them to maintain a clearer mind for their work. Kadavy concludes this chapter by emphasizing the importance of self-reflection in refining mind management practices. He suggests that individuals take time to evaluate which techniques and tools work best for them, as mind management is not a one-size-fits-all approach. Kadavy advocates for an experimental mindset, encouraging readers to try different strategies, track their effectiveness, and make adjustments based on personal needs and goals. This process of self-reflection not only helps to identify the most effective practices, but also builds a deeper understanding of one's own creative rhythm and preferences. In summary, Kadavy's advanced strategies for mind management invite readers to see constraints and targeted techniques as essential allies in the pursuit of creativity. Through the power of limits, creators can unlock new depths of innovation, while mind management techniques and tools provide practical ways to stay focused and mentally agile. By embracing these advanced strategies, Kadavy argues that creators can move beyond merely managing their time and begin to truly manage their minds, paving the way for a more fulfilling and productive creative journey. Conclusion. As we wrap up Mind Management, Not Time Management by David Kadavy, it's clear that this book offers a fresh and invaluable perspective on productivity. Kadavy challenges us to move beyond traditional time management approaches and instead focus on managing our mental energy, creativity, and unique rhythms. By understanding when we're at our best creatively, using constraints as a tool rather than a limit, and developing adaptable routines, we can foster a state of flow that's sustainable, enjoyable, and deeply productive. This journey of mind management isn't about rigidly adhering to schedules, but rather about creating conditions that honor our individual mindsets, making room for both focus and creativity in ways that enhance, rather than deplete, our mental resources. Kadavy's ideas remind us that true productivity is not a matter of hours clocked, but of mental clarity and intentional focus. This book is not just a guide for creatives, but a mindset shift for anyone looking to do meaningful work without succumbing to burnout. Whether you're an artist, an entrepreneur, or just someone who wants to work smarter, Mind Management, Not Time Management offers a path that values balance and respects the mind's natural ebb and flow. If you found this summary insightful, don't forget to like, share, and subscribe for more content like this. Feel free to explore other book summaries on this channel to keep learning, stay inspired, and take your productivity to the next level. And if you're ready to dive deeper into these strategies, grab a copy of Mind Management, Not Time Management from the link in the description. Remember, the journey to mastering your mind is ongoing, and every step you take brings you closer to achieving your full potential. Thanks for watching, and until next time, keep managing your mind, not just your time.